November 2nd, 2014, from FirstEnergy Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio. It was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland won the toss and they elected to defer, so Tampa Bay would take over first. They started off on their own 20. They brought the ball up to midfield, and they would go into Cleveland territory. Then on 1st and 10 from the Cleveland 43, Mike Glennon dropped back to pass, and he hit Mike Evans for a 27-yard reception. And then that brought it to the 16. And then they had a 3rd and 7 from the 13, and the incomplete pass would end up bringing out the field goal unit. Murray attempted a 31-yard field goal, but it was blocked by Wynn, and so the score still remained knotted up at goose eggs. So now the Browns would take over with about 10 minutes left in the first quarter. They had the ball on their own 23. Hoyer hit Hawkins for a 20-yard pass, and then Tate lost a yard, and then Hoyer was sacked by McCoy for a 6-yard loss, and that brought up 3rd and 17 from the Cleveland 36. Hoyer then found Benjamin for a 31-yard reception to pick up the first down and bring the ball into Tampa territory at the 33-yard line. A few plays later, though, their drive would stall, and Billy Cundiff would come out to attempt a 49-yard field goal. It was up and it was good, and the Browns got the first points on the scoreboard, with it now Cleveland 3, Tampa Bay 0. The Buccaneers would then take over on their own 27 with about 6 minutes left in the first quarter. And then on 3rd and 10 from the 27, Mike Glennon hit Bobby Rainey, and Rainey took it 34 yards as he made some amazing moves and got to Cleveland territory all the way to the 39. Their drive, though, would stall at that point as they were unable to pick up any more than 2 yards, and Murray would come out to attempt a 55-yard field goal, and it was up, but it was just shy as there wasn't enough oomph on it, and the 55-yarder did not go over the bar. So the score remained 3-0 Cleveland over Tampa Bay. The Browns now took over on their own 45 with about 4 minutes left in the first quarter, but 5 plays later they would be forced to punt the ball. So now the Bucs took over on their own 8-yard line. They were in the shadow of their own end zone. They managed to pick up a first down, a pair of first downs, but then on first down from the Tampa Bay 31, Mike Glennon dropped back to pass. He was looking for Evans, but he was intercepted by Whitner as Hayden ended up tipping the ball to Whitner. It was an amazing play. Joe Hayden with a heads-up play. Whitner catches the ball. He ran it back 54 yards, and so now the Browns had the ball on the Tampa Bay 21-yard line, and there was about 30 seconds left in the first quarter. The Browns would bring the first quarter to a close when Ben Tate ran for 4 yards after having caught a 16-yard pass. And so after one, it was 3-0 Cleveland over Tampa Bay. So to start things off in the second quarter, it was 2nd and goal from the Tampa Bay 1-yard line. Tate lost 3 yards, and then Hoyer dropped back to pass, and he was sacked by Smith, and that made it 4th and goal from the 11. And so Billy Cundiff would come out to attempt his second field goal. This one from 29 yards. It was up, it was good, and the score was now 6-0 Browns over the Buccaneers. So now the Buccaneers would take over on their own 20. They moved the ball up to midfield and into Cleveland territory, and they actually ended up with a 3rd and 11 on the Cleveland 24. Glennon dropped back to pass, and he found Mike Evans for the touchdown, a 24-yard touchdown pass that gave the Buccaneers the lead, with the score now 7-6. So now Cleveland would take over with about a little less than 9 minutes left in the first half. They had it on their own 18. Hoyer dropped back, and he was intercepted by Banks. So now Tampa Bay would take over in the red zone as they had the ball on the Cleveland 10 to start things out. So it was 1st and goal right on the beginning of the possession. Bobby Rainey lost 5 yards, and then on 2nd and goal from the 15, Mike Glennon dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by Gibson, as that's his 6th interception on the year. And so he made up for the mistake as both teams had interceptions on consecutive possessions. So now Cleveland would take back over on their own 8-yard line as they were backed up against their own end zone. West would then run for 6 yards, but then he lost 4 yards, and that would make it 3rd and 8. And an incomplete pass would bring out the punting unit. And so the Browns went 3 and out, and the Buccaneers would now take over with a little over 6 minutes left in the second quarter. They had the ball on their own 36. They'd bring it up towards midfield, and on 1st and 10 from the 49, Glennon dropped back. He hit Vincent Jackson for a 22-yard reception that brought the ball to the 29. They weren't able to pick up a first down, though, and so now Murray would come out to attempt his 3rd field goal. He'd missed 2 already. One was blocked and one was short. This one was from 40 yards, and it was good. And so now it was 10-0 as the Bucs extended their lead over the Browns to 4 points, or 10-6. So now Cleveland got the ball on their own 21. They would pick up a first down, and then they picked up another first down. So now they had the ball at midfield as it was on the 49. And then after only picking up a yard, it was now 2nd and 9. Hoyer dropped back and he found Barnage for a 13-yard pass to bring it to the Tampa Bay 37. But then Hoyer got sacked by McCoy, as McCoy had already sacked him once in this game. And now it was 3rd and 14. And they ended up picking up a first down as Hoyer hit Austin for a 16-yard pass. And now with just seconds left on the clock, Cleveland would call their final timeout. They set up the field goal unit, but then Tampa tried to ice the kicker, so they called a timeout as there was just enough time on the clock for one last kick. Billy Cundiff, after the 2 timeouts now, came out, and it was a 43-yard attempt. He kicked it, it was up, it was good, and it was once again a 1-point game as the score was now Tampa Bay 10, Cleveland 9. So going into the locker rooms at halftime, the Browns trailed the Buccaneers by 1 point. So starting things off in the 3rd quarter, the Browns would start it off on their own 20. They picked up a first down on their first play, and then they picked up another first down with a 20-yard pass to Gabriel. So now it was a 1st and 10 on the 48. They would end up faced with a 3rd and 1 a couple plays later on the Tampa 39. Hoyer hit Dre for a 26-yard pass. So now it was a first down in the red zone on the Tampa Bay 13-yard line. They would end up being forced with a 4th down. They would actually line up to kick a field goal, but then McCoy was lined up in the neutral zone, and so now it would end up being 4th and 1, but then they ended up deciding, hey, let's go for it, and they picked up 2 yards, and now it was 1st and goal on the 2-yard line as West picked up those 2 yards. He then ran for no gain, so now it was 2nd and goal on the 2. Hoyer would then pass the ball to West, and he caught it for a 2-yard touchdown, and it was now 16-10 Browns over the Buccaneers as Cleveland took back the lead as they were now up by 6 points. So now the Buccaneers would take over on their own 20-yard line, and they would end up moving the ball towards midfield. But they would end up punting the ball, though, as soon as they got into Cleveland territory. Their drive stalled, and so now the Browns would take over, backed up against their own end zone as they had the ball on their 9-yard line, and they would end up going 3 and out and punting the ball back to the Buccaneers. So now with about 4 minutes left in the 3rd quarter, the Buccaneers would start with the ball on their on the Cleveland 45. Glennon hit Jackson for a 15-yard pass. James then ran for 6 yards, and now it was 2nd and 4 on the 24. Mike Glennon dropped back to pass, and he hit Mike Evans for a 24-yard touchdown, and Tampa Bay took back the lead by 1 point, with the score now 17-16. So now the Browns would take over with less than 3 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. They had the ball on their own 30, but they would go 3 and out and punt the ball back to the Bucs, as the Buccaneers would now take over on their own 40 with about a minute left before the end of the 3rd. So they would end up bringing the 3rd to a close. When on 2nd and 7 from the 43, Glennon hit Evans for a 5-yard pass. And so after 3 quarters of play, the score was 17-16, Tampa Bay over Cleveland. So to start things off in the 4th quarter, The Bucs had the ball on the 48 with a 3rd and 2, and an incomplete pass would end up making it 4th down, and they would punt the ball to the Browns. So now Cleveland would take over on their own 9-yard line as they trailed by 1 point. And they would end up getting out of the shell of their end zone, even though they went backwards before they went forwards, as they lost yards on the first couple plays. But they ended up with a 3rd and 16 on their own 3-yard line. Hoyer hit Austin for a 25-yard pass, so now it was a 1st down on the 28. So then, with 2nd and 7 from the 31, Hoyer hit Benjamin for a 21-yard pass, and that made a 1st down in Tampa Bay territory on the 48. Hoyer then hit Gabriel for a 14-yard pass, and now it was 1st down on the Tampa Bay 34 for the Browns. Hoyer then dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by McDonald as McDougald tipped the ball to McDonald. It was crazy. The second tipped interception. And so now the Buccaneers would take over with 11.5 minutes left in this game. They had it on their own 39 with the 1-point lead, but they would go 3 and out and punt the ball to Cleveland. So now the Browns would take over on their own 35 with less than 10 minutes left in the game, trailing by 1. And then, after picking up a yard on 1st down, they'd be faced with 2nd and 9 from the 34. Hoyer dropped back to pass, and he hit Taylor Gabriel for a 34-yard touchdown pass. And the Cleveland Browns were now in the lead with the score 22-17. So the 2-point conversion was now coming out, the 2-point unit, and they failed. And so that's why it would remain 22-17, as they had now a 5-point lead. The Buccaneers now took over with about 9 minutes left in this game, but after 4 plays, they would punt the ball. And so now the Browns would get the ball back with the lead and 7 minutes on the clock. They ate up about 4.5 minutes, but they would end up punting the ball when they got around midfield. So now the Buccaneers would take over with 2.5 minutes left in this game. They had the ball on their own 23, trailing by 5 points. Glennon would hit Evans for a 31-yard pass that brought the ball into Cleveland territory. And then Glennon hit Evans for a 9-yard pass, so now it was 2nd and 1 on the 37, but a pair of incomplete passes would bring up 4th and 1. But then there was an offensive pass interference call, and that would make it 4th and 11. They would elect to go for it, and an incomplete pass would turn the ball over on downs as the Browns defense came up clutch. And now Cleveland would get the ball back at midfield on their own 47 with about 1.5 minutes left in this game. They just pounded the ball with Ben Tate, and they actually would end up on the last play with just seconds left. They would go for a pass. It was incomplete, but the time ran out. And although they technically would have turned the ball over on downs, the game came to a close as time had expired. And the Cleveland Browns win this game 22-17 over the Buccaneers. And with the victory, Cleveland is now 5-3 on the season. They're 4-1 at home. The Buccaneers are now 1-7 on the season. And their one win did come on the road. But in this game for Cleveland, Brian Hoyer was 21 for 34 with 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Mike Glennon was 17 for 33 with 260 yards, 2 interceptions, and 2 touchdowns. The leading rusher in the game was Bobby Rainey with 87 yards off of 19 carries. He also had a reception for 34 yards. The leading receiver was Mike Evans. He had 124 yards off of 7 receptions, 2 of which were for touchdowns. Gabriel was the leading receiver for Cleveland. He had 87 yards off of 5 receptions and a touchdown. And West was the leading rusher for the Browns with 48 yards off of 15 carries. So the Browns' running game really didn't show up, but they were able to win as their defense came up big. And on defense, the leading tackler in the game was Major Wright for the Buccaneers. He had 13 tackles in this game. The Bucs had 3 sacks. McCoy had 2 sacks. Smith had 1 sack. The Browns had 2 sacks. Their leading tackler was actually Buster Skrine. He had 9 tackles. Mingo had 1 sack for the Browns. The other sack went to Kruger. The Browns come up in this game pretty big. They had 2 picks. The Bucs also had 2 picks. Banks and McDonald had picks for the Bucs, and Whitner and Gibson had picks for the Browns. It's just a wild game, and in the end, the Browns pull off the victory with the fourth quarter come from behind.